So this we're doing today is the fifth in a series that we're doing about the nature of realization. And I always say this, but if you've missed previous ones, if you look at the little red thing in the seat in front of you, you can link in and pick that up off our website. All our talks and everything are on the website. You just have to click on there, and if you go to the page that's about the talks, you'll just get the talk itself rather than the whole service. And if you're new to the chapel, you want to be on our mailing list, that is the blue one. So we're doing this thing about realization because it's the season of Epiphany, and the season of Epiphany is the season where Jesus is revealed to the Gentiles. So it's about revelation. And it's about not only revelation, but then the realization of what is revealed. The three kings, it was revealed to them. It was revealed to them, the three kings, that they were going to, if they followed the star, they'd see Jesus. So they went and did the work they needed to be done, and then they realized what they'd been revealed to, and they saw Jesus. And so it's revelation and realization. And I began in that first week just to talk about what is revealed to us in our hearts, the whispers that the universe calls to us, the possibilities in our lives that maybe we might be able to experience, meaning something in life or more love or whatever. And we get called to, and we have these ideas and thoughts, and sometimes we shut them down, and sometimes we let them come, sometimes we breathe on them. And this series is really about how do you get those whispers, not just insights, but whispers that come to us, a calling almost, a vocation. How do we realize these vocations in our lives? So that was the first week. We talked about those whispers. And then the second week, I talked about, how do you hear those whispers? And I had this idea that really it's like standing on a bridge. And you stand on the bridge, and before you is everything in your life. Everything that's happening, your circumstances coming your way, all that sort of stuff. And within you are all your thoughts and feelings and emotions. That's all going on inside you. And so really, at every single moment that we're in that bridge, in that moment, with what's going on in front of us and also what's going on within us. And somehow we have to mediate those two things. And the way we do that, what flows under us is, in a bridge, is the river. And I said that the river is really our breath. And in being conscious of our breath, in meditation or during the moments that we are together, or when you're all the way through your life, if you're conscious of your breath, then you're able to stand on that bridge. You're able to get a sense of what's in front of you without necessarily reacting to it all the time, and what's within you without necessarily reacting all the time. So the bridge gives us the ability to be, what I said at the time was the adult in the room, which means you can actually act out of, in a sense, and we're going to talk about this today, disinterested in terms of what is going on. And we love having children's noises in the thing. There's no need to take children out here. We much prefer to have children in the chapel rather than not children. So we welcome the noise of children. So please don't feel you have to take that out. So we've got that. So, and then the next week I said that I think one of the key words in the 21st century is consent. I mean, it's really come to our notice with the Me Too movement and all that sort of thing. Consent is a big deal. But I think consent is much bigger than that. I think consent, we have to really consent to what's going on in our lives. And consent, I had a good definition of consent, which I used, which is consent comes from two Latin words, con, which means together, and sentire, which means to feel. So to consent is to feel together. That's where the word comes from. And it's really, the dictionary definition of consent is to yield when one has the right or power or will to oppose. So I think it's very important within personal relationships, but it's also, I think, important in terms of governments, that we consent to our government. In England, policing, the key word in policing is policing with consent. And if you haven't got consent for policing, then you can't go anywhere. And because it's policing with consent, in England, our policemen aren't armed at all. They have a truncheon, but that's it. And there's a consent. And I think also, nowadays, particularly in the 21st century, when we're looking at the fact that the world is really now, we are all interdependent. We know that we're interdependent on each other for so many things. And that interdependence requires consent, to be interdependent. Consent to actually work with each other to make things happen. And I think consent between nations is a very important thing. So I really feel that consent is such a key word. And the key thing here for us is consenting to what happens to us in our lives. So many times we want to push it away. And I'm saying, in terms of realizing our dreams, realizing the whispers within us, we need to consent to our lives, to consent to what is given to us. Because, we can't push it away. It comes to us, and then we consent to us. And so once we're in that situation where we're on that bridge, we've heard those whispers, we've consented to what's going on in our lives, and last week I said that then we're in a position to act. And if we don't act at all, if we just resist going out, well, one of the reasons we don't act is that, we often don't think that we're going to succeed. We think, oh, no. I said last week that when I thought I was worked in broadcasting originally, and I thought, well, I'm not going to broadcasting because I'm just not good enough. I'm just not going to be good enough compared to all the people I've seen. And so we don't put ourselves forward. We don't act on those whispers because often we think we're not good enough. But that old thing, you're not going to win the lottery unless you buy a ticket. You've got to act. You've got to sort of go in there and do it. And sometimes it's good not to act as well. You have to get a sense of what to do, whether to act or not to act. And that is by being conscious as to who we are and what's going on. So the process that I've led up to is the first stage, it's really about achieving peace. When you're on that bridge, you're in a sense of peace. To achieve that peace is to consent to our deep relationship with life as we stand on that bridge. And we stand on that bridge with the interface between our inner world and our outer worlds, with the breath, the river, straddling the two. We listen for those whispers. We listen for the calling of life. We consent to the life we're given, whatever the circumstances. Then we love life. We give to life with no expectation of return. When you're in meditation, what you're really doing is giving your attention to life. You're not wanting to be enlightened. You're just giving your attention to life with no expectation of return. You're showing up. And that's what we do in life. We just show up. We allow ourselves to be shaped and molded by that which is infinitely more wise than us, the great mind of the divine. And then we act. Once we consent to our relationship with life, then we act. And this life is our one chance to make a difference, to act on those whispers, and then to know when to act and when not to act. And when we begin to act, and this is the topic of today, it's important that we're acting out of self-mastery, a sense of being able to master the art of living. I had this quote from the Bhagavad Gita last week, which is Arjuna and Krishna are talking together, and Krishna says to Arjuna, self-mastered, with mind unattached at all times, beyond desire, one attains through renunciation the supreme freedom from action. So what's being said here is the act of self-mastery is to be beyond desire and be unattached. There is a sense of not being attached to the outcome. We're talking about realizing those whispered possibilities, and when we come to act, we need to act with that sense of presence, with that sense of self-mastery. And we have to act in an unattached way, not being overwhelmed by the circumstances as they come towards us, and not being swayed by our thoughts and emotions. Those are the two things that can get in the way. Self-mastered, with mind unattached at all times, beyond desire, one attains through renunciation the supreme freedom from action. So there is a sense in the realization of what we're trying to do, of when we act, not being attached to the outcome, not being worried about whether or not we're going to achieve what we supposedly want. And that means coming from our hearts, really, rather than our minds. I mentioned before, Ram Dass said that on your spiritual journey, you go from your spirituality, your heart, being in service to your psychodynamics, your mind. So to begin with, your spirituality, you go into spirituality because you want to get enlightened, because you want to be great, you want to be more, just a more cool person generally. Or at least, some of us do. And then you suddenly realize, no, that your mind, all the wanting bit, really needs to be in service to your spirituality, to your heart. In other words, your head has to be in service to your heart. Head in service to your heart, rather than your heart in service to your head. And when we stand on that bridge, it is our heart that sees the way. And for the heart to be clear-eyed, it has to have no other agendas than to serve the divine will that is calling us to those whispers. And actually, funny enough, I put this thing on your seat. I'll come back to it later. But Cynthia Brogeau is coming to talk in 2 weeks' time on the subject of seeing with the eye of the heart. And that is exactly what we're talking about here. We're talking about seeing with the eye of the heart. And we prepare ourselves throughout our lives. All of us have done that. We've school, college, everything we experience, everything happens to us. As Richard Rohr says, the first half of our lives is about building the container. We build who we are. And then the second half of our lives, once we've invested all that stuff in us, we're then obliged to spend it. We invest the stuff. There's no point investing all that stuff in us and then dying. Because what's the good of that? No, we invest in ourselves, and then you have to spend that investment in doing stuff. You have to actually go out there and do things, to spend that experience into our lives to make a difference. And to do that effectively, we have to have self-mastery. Mastery, from the Latin word magister, which is the root idea of the word magister, is the word more, as in getting more out of something. The root word of magister, magis, means more in Latin. So what we're talking about when you master something, it's you can get more out of it. That's what it's about. To have self-mastery is to realize your potential. We're talking now about realizing your potential, to get the most out of that self that's within us, to realize our vocation, to realize what each of us individually, and it's different for each of us, to realize what each of us is called to do. Not to be hindered by our emotions, our considerations, our thoughts, but to stand on that bridge, to mix my metaphors, and to steer the ship to maximum effect. We are, all of us, on our own. And having learnt the rules of the game in life, and, we've all done that, except probably Colette. She hasn't quite got the rules of the game yet, but she's finding out as she's wandering around the back there. Then we play the game out of what we've uncovered. And in this way, we realize those whispers that are within us. But one of the big problems in the whole spiritual game is that it's so much easier sometimes to follow what others say rather than think things out for ourselves and to take responsibility for realizing what's been revealed to us. And you can see that in the way that religions develop. In Christianity, the veneration of the church as being the intermediary between God and the people, that led to the Reformation. The church was terrified of people trying to work it all out for themselves, which is why the Bible wasn't translated into what's called the Vulgate, the proper languages of the different countries. They killed people for translating the Bible because they wanted to keep it so the priests were the only people that could understand what was going on. And all the services were in Latin. Goodness knows what they knew what was going on, but no one understood what was going on, so they just said, you've got to do this, or we'll kill you. And the church terrified people, if they wanted to work it out for themselves, because it took away the power of knowing. And it was for that reason the church, didn't let the Bible be translated from Latin, because people might work it out for themselves. And you can see today in the slavish way that the letter of the law the letter of the Bible is followed by some parts of Christianity, by moral codes that are strongly set up and enforced. You know, if you go to some place, they will tell you what to do. This is what you do. There's no argument about it, you know. And why? Because it says so in the Bible. You don't have to work it out for yourself. Someone else will tell you what to do. And you know, that is why cults are so attractive. Clear ways to enlightenment that all should follow. And the way, you know, is set out by the great leader. And the great leader gives us the answer to all of us. Actually, when I did my training, you have to go and serve a bit in the church. And I didn't really fancy serving in a church in Reading or Surbiton or something like that. So I always used to buy my incense from Kyoto in Japan. So I thought, well, I'd like to go to Kyoto. And so I said to the person at the university, I want to go and do my intern in Kyoto. And they said, you can't do that. But it somehow got back to the Bishop of Kyoto. And I was formally invited to go to Kyoto to visit. So he said, well, I can't say no to that. So I went off there. Anyway, during my time when I was there in the diocese, we had a seminar on cults. And because Japanese cults are huge. You might have heard of Om Shinrikyo, which is the one that poisoned all the people in the subways and things like that. Anyway, so we had this thing on cults. And in the afternoon, our afternoon activity was to go and visit a cult. So we all got onto this bus. And we all said to each other, like, if I want to stay, please drag me out. So we went off on this bus to this cult. And it was really difficult, because really weird, because when we arrived, there were all these people greeting us. And each person that greeting us said to each person individually, welcome home. And it's like, we were all like freaked out straight away. But, you know, people love that sense of certainty that you get in those cults. And, you know, most religions are clear about this idea. You know, when you come down to it, most religions, you know, or the big world religions, are clear, if you look deeply, about the idea of self-mastery. Jesus said the kingdom of heaven is within you. He didn't say the kingdom of heaven is within the priest. He said, no, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Which is why, Linji Zion came up with that famous phrase to his disciples in the 9th century. And you'll all know this phrase. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. Well-known phrase, which really means you don't have to obey what other people are saying. If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. You know, do not bow down and worship. Take responsibility. The idea is we need to let go of our teachers in order to attain true liberation. This is self-mastery, where we're not looking for some spiritual master to follow, but we recognize ourselves as being our own master. Self-mastery is where we recognize there's no one else to tell us how to live our lives, and we decide to take responsibility ourselves. We can use each other's teachers, you know, we can use teachers to help us on the way, but we finally have to realize that we're in the driving seat. And really, that is the attitude of the chapel here. You know, the whole attitude in the chapel here is that you are in the driving seat of your spiritual life. Which is why we have the Tao Te Ching over here, and we have the Bible over here, and we've even had the Bhagavad Gita today over here, which means you can choose the bits that you feel are right to guide you on your way. And we come together sort of to help each other and guide each other. But really, the way we do it here is by having it in the driving seat. Father Robert Kennedy came, he was a Zen master, came a few years ago. And in discussing a koan, a Zen koan, he said, this is a warning to avoid imitation, to avoid being only followers. For even if we follow perfectly every word and gesture of a perfect master, it is not enough to bring about our own liberation and development as human beings. He then quotes Jayata on self-mastery, and this is the quote from this Zen master. I do not seek the way, yet I'm not confused. I do not venerate the Buddhas, yet I'm not conceited. I do not meditate for long periods of time, yet I'm not lazy. I do not restrict myself to one meal a day, yet I'm not attached to food. I do not know what is enough, yet I'm not covetous. When the mind seeks nothing, this is called the way. There's an echo of Jesus there. Can anyone see what the echo of Jesus is? The echo of Jesus is he went, and hung out with prostitutes and sinners. And he came eating and drinking. And all the Pharisees hated it. It's the same sort of direction. I love that story of Richard Rohr. I've told this before, but Richard Rohr was called up by, he's a Catholic, he was called up by the Catholic bishop for giving communion to the Episcopal Church, which he's not allowed to do. The bishop said to him, why are you giving communion to the Episcopal Church? And Richard Rohr said, well, if it was good enough for Jesus to eat with prostitutes and sinners, I think the Lord will not mind if I eat with my Episcopal brothers and sisters. That shut the bishop up. I thought it was such a good answer anyway. So, that idea of finding the way, and that's what we're trying to do. You're on that bridge and you're acting in life. You do want to find the way. What is the way to do it? The idea of finding the way by not following a way. And it comes back to that idea is there is no way to follow, just living life to the full by responding to our potential in the portal of the present moment, being attached to nothing. And I've used this quote before, but the Dhammapada, the sayings of the Buddha, and the Buddha says, it is not good conduct that helps you on the way. This is a bit like the last one, but it's different. It is not good conduct that helps you on the way, nor ritual, nor book learning, nor withdrawal into the self, nor deep meditation. None of these confer mastery and joy. O seeker, he says, rely on nothing until you want nothing. This idea of wanting for nothing. Meister Eckhart, do you remember? Meister Eckhart always said the state of meditation is wanting for nothing, willing nothing, and knowing nothing. There is a contentment within that. I was once called up by my, when I was studying to be a priest, I was after I'd been ordained, this bloke called me up and said, the trouble with you is you're contented. I felt quite good about that. The trouble with you, it was a criticism, typical church. The trouble with you is you're contented. The difficulty is that we have to trust and have the presence of mind to work things out ourselves rather than do what everyone tells you. And that doesn't mean we don't study and try and find out the best way to live. No, we do. We do meditate. We do our best to do it. But it's our responsibility to use our hearts and our brains to realize what's done. And that not knowing is the door. We think, I don't know, but that is the door. That the cloud of unknowing. There's a lot of spiritual teaching which says actually not knowing. The idea of not knowing is a door in spirituality. Not blindly not knowing, but not knowing out of an understanding that our not knowing is both a question and an answer in itself. Not knowing is both a question and an answer in itself. It is an attitude that uses the mind to accept and consent rather than control, and then to respond rather than react. And then the journey begins. If you can get to that place, the journey begins. Only then will we let go of everything else and begin to be moved, and this is the key thing, to be moved by our participation with the present moment. When we're moved by our participation with the present moment, the journey begins. And everything else is preparation. I love T.S. Eliot. He has 4 quartets, always fantastic bits. The lovely bit he has in the 4 quartets, always a bit confusing, but stay with it. He's talking about this place. He says, in order to arrive there, to arrive where you are, you have to get from where you are not. You must go by way wherein there is no ecstasy. In order to arrive at what you do not know, you must go by a way which is a way of ignorance. In order to possess what you do not possess, you must go by way of dispossession. In order to arrive at what you are not, you must go through the way in which you are not. And what you do not know is the only thing you know. And what you own is what you do not own. And where you are is where you are not. In order to arrive there, to arrive where you are, to get from where you are not, you must go by way where there is no ecstasy. You've got to go by way where you're not led into some desire or whatever it is. You've got to go into that sense of nothing. In order to arrive at what you do not know, you must go by way of ignorance. You've got to be prepared to not know. In our society, it's so difficult to be prepared to not know. In order to possess what you do not possess, you must go by way of dispossession. And what that means is, if you want to possess, then everything else is not possessed. But if you don't want to possess, then you have everything because everything is available to you. It's that sort of understanding. It is a place of arrival that contains the journey. I think that's an interesting thought. A place of arrival that contains the whole journey. And you have all that you need for the journey. A journey that begins and ends. And this journey begins and ends in the present moment. Which is why we had that quote that Andy read. Express yourself completely. Then keep quiet. Be like the forces of nature. This is when you're on the bridge. Be like the forces of nature in your life. When it blows, there is only wind. When it rains, there is only rain. When the clouds pass, the sun shines through. In other words, being in the present moment. If you open yourselves to the Tao, which is really that life force, that calling. If you open yourselves to the Tao, you are one with the Tao. And you can embody it completely. As Merton says, we are, God utters us like a word. God utters us like a word, but the word can never know the voice that uttered it. We are uttered by the Tao. If you open yourself to insight, you are one with insight, and you can use it completely. If you open yourselves to loss, you are one with loss, and you can accept it completely. So, open yourself to the Tao, then trust your natural responses. This is self-mastery, and everything will fall into place. That is what we're suggesting here, that it will fall into place. And if you think it's not falling into place, just consent to the not falling into place being the falling into place. Even if it looks like it's falling apart, that's what it's got. That is the real, that is the wholeness of it is the falling apart of it. And there is a sense that there is nothing left to do. And that allows us to truly serve. We're not trying to get anywhere, not following any teaching or practice. Instead, we're just available to respond with love to whatever the universe brings us. To respond with love. That is our job. To whatever the universe brings us. To pour ourselves. And I like the idea of pouring ourselves fully into the present moment. Pouring yourself right now. Fully with your attention into the present moment. You pour yourself. That's how you spend yourself, giving attention and love to whatever comes our way with no expectation of return. It is to be attuned to something else other than the dictates of the mind. It is to leave behind childish ambition to get somewhere, but instead take the path that takes us where we need to go. I always remember when Peter meets Jesus on the shore, on the lake after the resurrection. Jesus says to Peter, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and you went where you wanted. But when you're old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. It is the same message. It's to be taken by life, to be taken by the path rather than the path, taking a path for ourselves. Last page, so don't panic. That's what it means to stand on the bridge and to see the path come towards you. You see the path come towards you. rather than trying to, where am I supposed to go? No, you see it come towards you. And then that's what it means to stand on the bridge and see the path comes towards you. And if difficult things come up, you say, well, then I have the wisdom, the confidence to deal with what's difficult. And you do. All of us have the confidence to deal with those difficult things in our lives that we oh gosh, no, you do know. You have the ability to deal with it. And that's where we have, to take action and consent to our lives and know the part we have to play from what the universe deals us. Only then can we hear that calling, those whispers. And we have to take that into every single moment. Sitting where you are now, when you're at a meal with your family, when you're at work, at rest, with your money, with your politics, you have to be okay with it all. And your striving should only be to have yourself more deeply consenting to what comes before you, that deep consent. And this is the essence of self-mastery. There's a confidence in that. One doesn't rely on teachers or practices, but we find our own way through letting go of everything else, being unattached to what's going on within us and without us, and including the outcome of our actions, where we ourselves become our own masters, not looking for a Jesus or a Buddha or Muhammad. We have all we need in our relationship with the divine through our portal of the present moment. And this is how the whispers are revealed to us, and we are able to realize them in the course of our lives. I love the songs that Sam chooses. And if you think, these are just, love songs. We had an event on Thursday with the Aspen Jewish congregation. Myself and the rabbi were doing something together. And the rabbi was saying that, if you look at the Song of Songs, you can look at it as erotic literature. But actually, it is description of the relationship between the individual and the divine. And a lot of, when you look at a lot of love songs, if you transpose the male, female, male, whatever it is, to the relationship with the self, it still all makes sense, and it's worth listening to it in those sort of terms. So we always have an opportunity to just say a few words, to either disagree with me or share an experience or add something to the conversation. We're totally okay to have silence as well. Nobody needs to say anything. But I always think it's important to give people an opportunity to speak. So does anybody like to make a contribution or say anything? Eric. Thank you.
I'm reminded of the...
Let me just check this is turned on. Yeah, it is, yeah.
Your sermon reminded me of the breathtaking Zen simplicity of a quote from the great Irish poet Oscar Wilde, who said, "I am never so myself as when I'm not."
That's fantastic. Oscar Wilde, that great Irish poet. I'm never so myself as when I'm not. I love that. That's great. Fantastic. Thank you, Eric. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, of course you can. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, you can say something, yeah.
I can be a bit of a control person. And it's funny, in the last 6 months, so many things that I had planned out just fell apart. And so that's why I relate so much to what you were saying. Luckily, I have enough years behind me that I realize this is all sort of shaping me, how I respond to what's happening, because I know I don't really know anything. So I can make all these plans and think, oh, this is what I want, or this is what's going to work. And recently it was shown to me, no, you know even less than the nothing that you thought you knew.
Yeah.
And the only way I was really able to get through it and stay peaceful and sober and all of those good things was to just pay attention to the moments and realize, you know what, I'm not driving, but if I really do trust and love, I can just focus on what's happening and keep breathing and keep walking through it. Because that's changing me and my ability to not try to live from here.
Yeah.
but to live from my heart and to trust that, you know what, this is life.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate what you said. I totally relate to it, and thank you.
Thank you. And that does bring us to, which I think everybody wants, that it brings us to a place of peace when you're not trying to control everything. And that's literally, we've done that in a previous sermon, what everybody looking for, whatever they say, is a place of peace. That's what everybody's looking for. Yeah. Anybody else, finally? Yes, Bruce.
When it comes to the act part, if you look at sort of a bell-shaped curve, there's some people that are just so, I mean, it's such an active amygdala. I mean, they're hiding away and have agoraphobia or something. There's other people that just, want to get out there and compete or do whatever they want to do, and nothing will stop them. But, the huge, crowd in the middle is pretty much paralyzed with whatever anxieties, issues they have for whatever reasons. And I think you have to so it's almost like everybody has a 500 horsepower engine, they just have 95 emergency brakes on. So first you have to release the brakes. And then some people actually need, some sort of tuning up of what their inherent horsepower is. They may only have 100, but they've got rid of the brakes and so forth. What sort of spiritual, sort of wisdom is there that sort of helps people say, hey, you're great, relax, it's okay, and then, get excited and move on, because most people are, innately, we all want to get better. We'd like to be sort of recognized, acclaimed, and be able to contribute that to the greater good.
Yeah.
But people are just frozen.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Finally, Ward.
Inspired by Eric's quote, I think there's some zen to this. I'm schizophrenic, and so am I.
I think you'll be hearing from the Schizophrenic Society, actually. I once said something about it. They're very keen, and I had a letter from them explaining.